it's been not too long ago, probably within the last week, talked about the crack-up boom and trying to explain it and to look into Mises for an explanation to try to get people to understand exactly what happens. And it's not all that complicated because it's happened so many times. That's when inflation of the money supply, the money managers get out of hand, and all they can do to solve their problems is print more and more, and it's an addiction to it, and finally the currency loses its value, and then there's a rush to the exits, and the dollars or the other or currency that they're dealing with has to go into something else because they've given up confidence in the current system. And we did talk about that, but we had a few people wrote in and said, yeah, but tell us what to do. Yeah, we know. We understand that. This is a mess. Runaway inflation is bad. We know the history, but we'd like some practical thing to do. And, this is a tough one because there are a lot of unknowns, even when you know what causes something, and even though you know something is coming, its very nature is not known to us because there could be an event next month, next year, or 2 years from now where the event causes the rush for the exits. People want to get out of dollars, they dump dollars, they buy stuff, and then of course the biggest challenge under those conditions is the loss of liberty, because the government and the people will want help, and it will be then when the desire for the government helping out means send us more money to pay our bills instead of helping temporarily, like it's helped this past year with COVID. The money has been out there, and a lot of people have made their payments, but a lot of them quit working. They're depending on those checks, and they're not. They don't take jobs, and all of a sudden, they're feeling better. But eventually, the monetary bailouts can't continue to bail out, and that's when people lose confidence. And that's what we're approaching. And I find it difficult to say, well, A, B, C, D. But for me, it is so much easier, and it's just such a shame that we can't be working on the prevention. And the prevention should have been done years ago, and because this is subtle, it's insidious. It began when the Federal Reserve was created, and all the activity has happened over the years, and now we're at a point of runaway spending. Just the wars that we fought in this century, we spent $8 trillion, and that's a lot of money. We were engaged in killing 1 million people, and that's on both sides of all these wars. It's just a horrendous situation. So yeah, it's easy to say, if somebody's been smoking too much and could have a cancer of the lung, it's real easy to say what the prevention is, but we need the information first. And so when the economic and social cancer hits us, it's a lot tougher. But we do have things that can be done because people have planned and know it's happening. But I'm going to start with making the first suggestion is, if you're concerned about that, you should know where your friends are. Because traditionally when a crisis came and governments were more trustworthy, you said, the government's going to help me, and because there was so much wealth, the passing out of money was helpful. But that's right now, even temporarily listening to the government, it's not helpful. The judicial system is not in very good shape. So we can't do that. We can't expect the government to. So I think it's very neat, and a good place to start is, thinking about the viewers that we have on this program and the conferences we have, because people meet each other at these conferences, and I think these associations are good, and they're voluntary, and individuals will find different things to do. Maybe geographically they live in similar places. Some people may live on a farm, maybe live on a city. So these are a lot of variables on what to do. Some will have saved precious metals to be used in emergency and be able to purchase some of the things that they need. But it is something that I think is very, very valuable to know your friends. You could start with your families and your neighbors, your community, your church, and really it should be philosophic too. One thing that I find a real shame, what has gone on now, is the split in the families over COVID. the people, the propagandists about, if you don't mask and you don't, go to lockdown and all these things, that you're doing hateful things, you're killing people. And this has split families. Families go at each other because it's sort of, they've been indoctrinated, and it will split families. So that's why it's very important. If you're looking for getting a group together, at least talking together and making some plans, they should be on the same wavelength when it comes to what the role of government ought to be. So that's the first thing that I'm going to mention. I'm going to mention 4 categories of areas where we should work. And these are not the complete answers, but these are things that we have to think about. Especially now with COVID, the health issue is an issue. And one thing that I think is beneficial that's coming out of this COVID, there's been a lot of people been introduced to more natural remedies. Even now, even the CDC has softened a position on the use of natural remedies, even though it's insincere from my viewpoint. But so I think when you're talking about what to do and prepare, understanding your needs, because your needs are going to be different. If you're a diabetic, your preservation of what you might need in an emergency. The emergency might be 1 week, it might be a month, it might be a year. You don't know. But it's just like if you're going on a trip. If you have medical conditions, heart medicine or diabetic medicine, you might be able to make those plans and reach other people to have the same interest. I think the other thing that should be done is the protection of wealth. And you have to be selfish. If you're protecting your own stuff, you're selfish and greedy. But if you give away somebody else's wealth, you're a hero and you're a humanitarian. So that's the craziness of it all. And I keep thinking they criticize people for being selfish and taking care of themselves. Did you ever think about what the world would be like if everybody did it? Every individual assumed responsibility for themselves. What would it be like? It would take a lot of pressure off those in government to try to coerce everybody. But there is that old argument about people who become dependent and not like the government to take care of them versus people understanding that if you really want to be taken care of and safe, you have to have some self-reliance. So I think protection of wealth is very important. Owning the best you can on property that might be useful in a time of emergency. But that's a tough one, because how many people live in the cities versus in the rural areas? In the Great Depression of the 30s, like 80% of the people or more didn't live in the cities. They were rural people, and they could do more things. And even though they had a lot of controls on what they could do, they regulated crops and everything else and did things wrong. But there are places and things that people can do to own some land and make a decision on how it can be used, and that could be done by individuals or a group of people. I think the other thing that people can think about when they're talking about what do we do? I happen to be a strong believer in the Constitution, strong believer in the Bill of Rights, a strong believer in the Second Amendment, but I have not had a natural inclination to saying, you want me to protect you because I'm a good shot or something like that. No, I want to know somebody that believes as I do and are willing to help develop a protection system. So therefore, I think that is one thing that is probably pretty good in this country. I hope that that the effort, they're going to control the ammunition, and they'll try to control guns, and they'll do it in the judicial system. They'll do it through legislation. But ultimately, if it gets really, really bad, if we end up with a Venezuela, having a gun would be a good protection. And in my case, I'm going to look for some help, and I might be able to use some of my silver coins, to find that help. And that to me is very important. But ultimately, I want to be with people who cherish their liberty, that they're willing to fight and struggle and resist. And that's why we can identify the people willing to take risk, because it's tough under COVID to take those risks, and it's hard to sort it out, because everybody who's resistant and not doing exactly you think what they should do on COVID and lockdown and these things out, because some people, if they totally lose their every ounce of income if they do something currently. But resisting under reasonable conditions that you can figure out, I think the more people can resist, and I think that's improving. A lot more people are resisting than ever. So I would be looking for people who have that ability and to do it, and desire, and an understanding what liberty is all about and how that's worked into the non-aggression principle, where people cannot initiate force against another one for their personal benefit. When I first really got to studying all this was in the late 60s, and the prediction of the breakdown of Bretton Woods was coming, and gold was $35 an ounce, and silver was a $1.29 an ounce. That people knew that was coming, and they started, buying it and preparing. And there was really bad times in the 70s, but it never got to this crack-up boom. But it was getting pretty close. But I think that if you can't do everything, there's a few people we know that are very, very capable of being self-sustaining and producing their own electrical power and raising their crops. I guess the most I say, I have a small place here in Lake Jackson. I have a couple cows, and we have a lot of wild pigs. But believe me, I don't want to depend on them. So what do you do if you admit that you don't have the ability to provide for your needs? And that is, I think it comes to purchasing power. For very short periods of time, Federal Reserve notes might be helpful to you. If the bank's closed and it's a 3-day deal, maybe that is helpful. And it can't hurt anything other than the fact that they could depreciate very quickly. But long term, even back in the early 70s when this first started, there are coin dealers were popping up. And one of the strongest advice that they gave then, and they still give it now, if people don't have any coins, the advice generally has been get what they call junk silver. Junk silver just means that it's the old silver coinage of U.S. coinage. And back then, even now, the argument is it's recognizable and it has a silver content. What was once $1.29 a pound and an ounce now is $16 or so. It's way up. But a lot of people argue it's even rigged, and yet it's still a haven. And believe me, under these conditions, people will take what you call junk silver, old silver dollars. But in current times, the coin that I like the best, and I still use it for gifting to my children, and because I was always a coin collector, and I like that idea, and some of my kids are into that, and that is the Silver Eagle, the U.S. Silver Eagle. It's a pure silver ounce, and it's recognizable. I think it might be the most popular coin in the world, so other people will recognize it. And although silver prices aren't as high as some have predicted, I think under these circumstances, it might be able to buy a little bit of temporary help and help you survive and let other people provide. But you have to have it, because there under these circumstances throughout the world, when conditions get this bad, there's always they call it the black market, but it's really the real market. People do exchange goods, but bartering is very inefficient, and the metals are very practical. So if you have those, and I would say, well, people will say, yeah, but you started back in 1971, and your silver coins, have good purchasing power. Well, when things move rapidly, the purchasing power for silver and gold will still go up, because they're not going to quit printing the money. I mean, right now we're in a curse. The problem that we have right now is we're not paying for just sustaining what we have. We're bearing the burden of the debt that has been run up over all these years. And the amount of debt this government has, and many other people have, and the world has to be liquidated. That's what the market wants. There's too much debt, because if interest rates go up this much, it's going to wipe out everybody, and there's too much debt liquidation, as well as we need the malinvestment, the easy credit that's been going on for the last couple of years, making investments. You will see it. There'll be houses once again that there would be some malinvestment. There'll be bubbles all over. I saw today there was a story about the bubble in fancy old cars. That sounds like a lot of fun, and yet the prices are skyrocketing. But It'll go into different things, but the malinvestment, the goal of the marketplace is to liquidate the debt. And it will not be liquidated by the American people demanding that the Congress live within its means and collect more than it spends and pay off the debt. Not going to happen. This is going to continue until I personally believe there'll be a crack-up boom. But I also personally don't want to say when it's going to happen next month or next year or whenever, because these events aren't predictable, and you can't predict the human action of governments. The authoritarianism is our biggest threat. How are they going to come down on us? And just think of how authoritarianism has thrived these past 18 months over the scare tactics of COVID.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
What to do in such a situation? Inform yourself and keep your financial education strong. We from the Compact Group offer our loyal subscribers a free educational portal with first-hand monetary, financial, and economic knowledge. Enter our invite-only Insider Club by clicking the link below. You will get access to first-class information far earlier than the rest. We have prepared a special deal for all our members where you can access a giant pool of Robert Kiyosaki's financial wisdom for just $1. To find out more, simply click the link below and join our Insider Club absolutely free. But there is more you can and should do. Build up several streams of income. More and more people realize that they have to take their future in their own hands, but they don't know how and where to start. We from Compact offer our Insider Club members unique opportunities. Strengthen your financial muscle and get the edge. Click the link below. Become part of our free Insider Club. No financial obligations. But there's one important thing you have to know. You have to become active. So do it now. Become active and see you on the other side.